Hey, what's up, FreeThinklings? Welcome to an episode of FreeThink or Die. Yeah, that's what I'm calling it today. It's hosted by Freethinking Ministries. I'm Dr. Tim Stratton, and today I'm interviewing Batman. Yeah, that's right. You don't want to miss it. So last week I interviewed a hero, Monique Duson, and today I'm interviewing another hero, Batman. But before Batman joins us, make sure to subscribe to the Freethinking Ministries YouTube channel, like this video, and ring that bell. Hey, it really helps us if you share this video too. So thanks for that. Well, today's guest is often referred to as Batman or the Batman of Christian Apologetics. So I didn't really lie to you because he is actually referred to as the Batman of Christian Apologetics. I think even William Lane Craig has referred to this guy as the Batman of apologetics. Well, this is the case because even though everyone in the field knows of Wintery Knight and has seen him fight the good fight on multiple occasions over many years now, so many people, everybody that's in the field of apologetics knows who Wintery Knight is, but hardly anybody has ever seen his face unmasked or knows his true identity. Hey, I happen to know, but hey, I'm cool like that. I'm privileged. Well, that's a bad word now. Anyway, one thing we do know is, despite the name Wintery, he is a person of color. Be that as it may, unlike the mobs in the streets, he loves America and opposes the Marxist revolution growing in our society. Now, I believe this might be his first live appearance. I could be wrong. But even though this is a live stream, we're going to do our best to keep his true identity secure. You know, he keeps it secret for a reason. So he might be hiding in the shadows. We'll see. So with all of that said, please welcome a real life superhero, ladies and gentlemen, Wintery Knight. Oh, there he is. He's hiding in the shadows.
Yes, I'm hiding in the shadows today. I am just, I think we've all seen lately how dangerous it can be, to let out too many details about yourself. So my goal is to make a difference without, exposing myself to danger unnecessarily.
Yeah, well, sadly, we seem to have woken up to a new society where it's probably good that you are keeping your identity secret. For a long time, I've been following you for quite a while, Mr. Knight, and I always kind of wondered, well, how come nobody knows who this guy is? And now I'm looking back and I'm thinking, maybe I should have done that, but I think it's too late for me. I think everybody knows me too well now. They know my lingo. As soon as even if I started wearing a mask all the time and I started by, going by the libertarian freedom fighter, that's not going to work. I mean, everybody's going to know who that is. And I start talking about Molinism, people are going to say, that's Stratton. So it's probably too late for me, at this point, and Tony Stark revealed that he was Iron Man. Yeah, too late for me. But you're still like Bruce Wayne. Nobody knows that Bruce Wayne is the Batman. So I think you're doing something right there. But anyway, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it wasn't too long ago that my Freethinking Ministries colleague, Tim Fox, he ran into you. You guys ran into each other at a conference. Now, I guess he was at a conference. You weren't at the conference. You guys you both found yourself in the same elevator at the same building, but for different reasons. We're not going to get into the details. But you did not have a disguise on, and you introduced yourself to the Fox man. And, Fox was kind of blown away. You've always kind of been like a hero to him as well, I think. So
yeah, I recognized him right away. I just looked at him and I said, there's Tim Fox.
Well, okay, so tell me about this. How did this go down?
Well, I mean, I can't give too many details, but he was standing in the lobby of the building, and I walked up and I just said, well, wow, what's Tim Fox doing here? And I introduced myself, and I was happy to meet him. It was just an accident.
Well, he was pretty stoked about that. You gave me a call as soon as you got done talking to him. You're like, you'll never believe it. The Wintery Knight. He knew who I was, and he introduced himself to me. I saw his face. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So shout out to Tim Fox. I know he's watching. Well, anyway, we got to get to know you. So tell us, every superhero has an origin story. So as much as you can without giving away your identity, tell us a little bit about your origin story and maybe your educational background and maybe your current career. I mean, do you own something equivalent to Wayne Enterprises?
Sadly, I do not. But when I was young, I wanted to study English or law, but my father had the idea of steering me more towards computer science. And actually, I'm going to be talking a bit about my immigration story. It turns out that if you want to come to America from a different country, you really need to focus on the skills that are in demand, and even go to the places where they have a shortage of that type of worker. So I decided to do my bachelor's and master's in computer science, and I've been working in IT for about 20 years now. So it wasn't my first choice, but it was what was needed to come here. And sometimes you have to do what you got to do,
Yeah. So what was the immigration policy like, or the experience like?
It was very difficult. I'll maybe talk a bit about my parents. My parents are originally from one of the countries in the Caribbean. So my ethnicity is I'm a West Indian Black. My mom's side of the family is all Muslim. My dad's side of the family is mostly Hindu with some Catholic.
Wow.
And my mom's family would raise bulls in order to lend them out to pull logs out of the forest for lumberjacks. My dad's family, they were sort of workers on a plantation that they didn't own, and he would pick things like breadfruit for money. My ancestry, we may have been slaves, or we may have been indentured servants after slavery was abolished. This is like a Commonwealth a country. And I'm the first evangelical Protestant in my family. Everyone else is something different. So pretty different, pretty wild.
Well, man, how'd that happen? How'd you become an evangelical Christian?
I've written about this before, but I got a New Testament in the schools that we were attending, and I read that. And people say the New Testament, when you read it, it kind of does read like history. It doesn't read like a fairy tale. And at that time, I had no reason to doubt that it was a legitimate history. So I started trying to test out the individual Bible verses in my regular life day by day, and I would try to put them to the test, and it seemed to work out very well. And that I was basically a lone Christian, if you can call it that, until I arrived in high school and then met other Christians. I think Hugh Ross has a similar story to mine. And basically then I started to go to a youth group and then to church after that. So I've never had a wild period. I've always, stuck to my initial convictions. I think partly because of how I was raised. Like I have a brother that I sometimes talk about. He's very different from me. We had the same teachers, the same schools, the same parents and everything. But the difference is that one of us, stuck to Christianity, and the other one, I think, fell under the influence of the culture, secular friends, and so on. So I think that explains that even as I've become successful, I've never lost that commitment, because the evidence of the difference that it makes to my life in terms of worldview and morality, and how I treat people and self-control and things like that are always with me. So, yeah.
So a couple side questions spinning off of that. Were you in America already when you became a Christian, or did you become a Christian before you immigrated here?
Became a Christian before I immigrated.
Okay, cool. And what was the other question I had? When did you get involved in apologetics?
Oh my goodness! In high school, I was known for apologetics. I had the youth pastor that I met at that youth group that I mentioned. when I got to high school. He said, "Well, what do you like as a Christian?" I said, "Well, I like to argue. My family argues a lot. We argue about
Really?
things." And he handed me a book by E.J. Carnell called Introduction to Christian Apologetics, which I think was William Lane Craig's also his formative book. And basically, yeah, I would just be willing to defend Christianity all throughout high school. We had Mormons, we had atheists, we had Muslims in my family, we had Hindus in my family.
Yeah.
Basically, I got into the habit of just listening to their questions, doing the research. And then when I went to university, I discovered William Lane Craig and a website called Leadership U, which is run by Christian Leadership Ministries. And I just, that was really the right path to discovering people like J.P. Moreland and Walter Bradley, Hugh Ross, the evidentialists. And just becoming familiar with how they gave lectures on campus, and you could buy the lectures, order the lectures, and listen to them, and just be able to give the same answers as they could.
Oh, that's great. So it was. Would you say it was Dr. Craig watching those Leadership U videos that took you to the next level, or I mean,
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually young Earth. Sometimes people ask Christians, "Have you ever changed your mind about anything?" Yeah, in high school we had to choose between chemistry, physics, and biology, and I took chemistry and physics. I was very good at them, but I was very uncomfortable thinking that I would go to a biology class and lose my faith in young Earth creationism, which I'm still fond of. But when I got to university and I saw William Lane Craig bring out that cosmological argument of his that he's so famous for, I just thought, you know what, this is really powerful, and I should definitely look into this, because I'm an intelligent design person. I don't accept macroevolution. There's just, I mean, that's putting it mildly. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I got my interest and how it developed.
Yeah. Well,
I've actually been on atheist podcasts, not as WK, but like just with a first name and no video or something like that.
Really?
So yeah.
So this is your first live broadcast as Wintery Knight, though, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm honored. Thank you very much. One more question. What was it like in your family? I mean, Hindus and Muslims, and now a Christian in the mix. What was that like?
I think I can remember having discussions, with this about those topics with them when they were young, but none of them were really solid about it. And the other thing is that I've written about this before, like, my parents were not necessarily like the most, they were both working. We were poor. I mean, so they sort of outsourced my education to the schools, and most people have like a good relationship with their parents where they really feel like their parents are, supportive and good. Well, my parents were very strict, and I didn't think of them as friends that much at all. And they were not monitoring, my education. They were just really aggressive about report cards being good. I think people who are Asian and Indian and will understand, where I'm coming from. So, with respect to religion, they hadn't looked into it very much. So I would go to my mother and say, how do you account for this in Surah 4, verse 157, where it says, Jesus never was crucified, and find me a historian who believes that. And she was like, I'm not going to research that for you. And I don't know what that answer is. And then similar questions with my dad. And they just didn't really have an answer, but they're thrilled with me right now. They're very happy. We were all liberal. We were all liberals when we were young, and now my parents are all politically conservative. My dad reads the Bible every day for like an hour.
So he's a Christian now.
Well, I would say my dad, I'm not sure exactly where they stand, but I know my dad reads the Bible every day. My mom, I think she just isn't spiritually oriented. She's much more concerned about being wealthy and money and things like that. So she doesn't have a lot of relationships with other people, and she, doesn't invest in other people. I don't know if she's ever recovered from being poor. That's how that's how the rest of the family kind of understands it. It's that she's never really got realized as she's gotten older and even retired that money isn't a big issue anymore, and it's okay now to take care of other people.
Yeah.
So my dad is great, though.
All right, that's good.
He and I are very close.
Well, I've been reading your blogs for a long time, well before I started blogging myself. And really, I think about some of those early days. I was going to you on a regular basis, reading your stuff to help form some of my thinking. So you had a big impact in my life several years ago. So yeah, that was a while ago. How long now have you been blogging? And also tell our audience, the kinds of things that you typically blog about.
Right. So I've been blogging since early 2009, right when Obama took office. And I felt I had to do something about this, because I had looked, I remember arguing with my mother about, she liked him at the time. And I was like, do you know he's voted for infanticide a couple of times as a state senator in Illinois? And I was working with friends who were also supporting him. And nothing I could say about his record seemed to faze my mom or my black coworkers or my Obama supporting coworkers. And I just thought, they don't know what's coming. But there was plenty of material out there about Obamacare and the incentives it created and whether it would work. There was good healthcare policy. I love healthcare policy and education policy and economics. So I started blogging then to kind of counter the agenda that I knew he would be bringing in. So on my blog, you're going to find a mix of evidential apologetics, including snarky debate summaries. I'm famous for those.
I really like those. I would go to those after every debate. Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty funny sometimes. And I write about current events and policies that affect Christians. In terms of politics, I feel that's important because it's sort of the rails in which you run your life. And for me, that's important because I'm trying to achieve stuff with my life. And if you suddenly come along and say, pass the Equality Act, that's going to affect drastically what I'm free to do. So I once wrote a post on the secular case against same-sex marriage, which was famous, and it got picked up on an atheist blog, Jeffrey J. Lauder's blog. Oh, really? And he was like, yeah, check out this Christian guy making a case against same-sex marriage using only evidence. And what do you all atheists think about that? So if the Equality Act comes out, it's conceivable that kind of stuff could get me into big trouble. And that's one of the reasons why I have an alias and I don't let people know where I work or where I live. But in terms of politics, I line up with the free enterprise system in terms of fiscal policy. In terms of social policy, I would say I'm extremely conservative. I oppose the sexual revolution, abortion, no-fault divorce, and sex outside of marriage. And I've never been married, so you know what that means. And I also like Reagan's peace through strength foreign policy, where we build up a strong military and we deter aggressors that way. And I think you could even see that under Trump, where he took a similar approach and was able to get somebody who was rattling the state. But it's escaping me now to stand down. I think if you have a big military, the goal is to not use it. Yeah. I know you were telling me about your tattoos before the show. Maybe you can show them. Yeah, you've got it. This. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, there it is.
What does that say?
Si vis pacem parabellum.
And what does that mean?
If you want peace, prepare for war.
Right. So you want to convince your enemies in foreign policy that you are ready for war and that it will be costly for them to attack you. So I believe that. So I think that covers the material I'm blogging on and, what I'm passionate about.
I totally agree with you. Obviously, because I got the tattoo. But yeah, peace through strength, right? Okay, so when I introduced you, I said that something like, although you go by the name Wintery, you're a person of color. So I think you mentioned it, but remind us, what's your ethnic background again?
I would count as a West Indian black. If you have ever read any Thomas Sowell, he calls us out. He says, "Wow, this group of blacks does really well in America, compared to like natural American blacks." And this is where I have some material prepared that I'm hoping we can cover about non-white ethnicities that really succeed in America, and the West Indian blacks are one of them. We have tight families. My parents would kill me if I got a divorce. There's no one in our family that divorces. I said it's a tough environment to grow up in because it's like tiger moms, tiger dads, tiger uncles, tiger aunts. Mm-hmm. You can pretty much kiss your butt goodbye if you get a B on your report card. I mean, you're in big trouble. There are some non-white groups that do well in America, and I am one of them. Our ethnicity.
Wow, interesting. So, okay, so you're a person of color, mm-hmm. and so as a person of color, you I don't know if you are aware, but there's some current racial issues dominating our society and in the media today. Have you seen anything about that?
Yeah. So I've heard about Black Lives Matter, and I understand that their two concerns are they're very worried that unarmed blacks are being shot, and that there are just disparities in wealth that are not caused by individual choices. I even have a quote here from Nicole Hannah-Jones. She's writing in the New York Times. I'm going to give you a list of all the footnotes for things that I read, but I felt this was so important that I've got to read you this quote. She's the author of the 1619 Project, and this is the view that America was founded from the beginning to defend slavery. And this is what she writes in her article in the New York Times. She goes, "To summarize, none of the actions we are told Black people must take if they want to, quote, lift themselves, unquote, out of poverty and gain financial stability," and she has a list: not marrying, not getting educated, not saving more, not owning a home, can mitigate 400 years of racialized plundering. So what she's saying there is the system is rigged against blacks. Nothing that they choose to do, marrying, education, saving money, owning a home, can lift them out of poverty because of 400 years of racialized plundering. So, if you give me a couple of minutes, I would love to just address those two concerns just quickly. This might take a little while, but you just stop me anytime.
Well, go ahead. But just let me. So you're saying that if I heard you right, Black Lives Matter. What would you say that what are the problems that they are trying to solve?
Primarily? I think that they're concerned. They're rioting, I think, against what they perceive as unwarranted police brutality against blacks. And the example they give is a shooting of George Floyd. And they're arguing that, look, police are just shooting unarmed black people. And this is happening enough that we need to, take extreme measures to stop this. And then the second problem, the one raised by Nicole Hannah-Jones, is how is it possible that black people can trail whites in terms of net worth? It can't be due to any of their individual decisions. It's got to be due to systemic racism, what she calls 400 years of racialized plundering. So with respect to that police bias point, I actually read some articles here by some people I really like. So Heather McDonald in the Wall Street Journal, she researches this and writes about this, and she's quoting the Washington Post database in this article. I'll give you the link. And she says this: "The police fatally shot 9 unarmed blacks and 19 unarmed whites in 2019. In 2018, there were 7,407 black homicide victims." And then Jason Riley, who's black, he writes in the Wall Street Journal, citing FBI crime statistics, "More than 90% of black murder victims are killed by other blacks." So just think 90% of the 7,400 or something like that, thousands. Mm-hmm. Okay. Go with a low estimate, but we're talking thousands. All right. Blacks commit violent crimes at 7 to 10 times the rate that whites do. And then, Matt Walsh writes in the Daily Wire that for those few unarmed blacks who are killed by the police, it turns out that it's not like they're just standing there. There's usually a violent struggle. And for the officers who are guilty, they get charged with murder or manslaughter. So my point about all this is I think that this isn't the biggest problem facing the Black community. That certainly we can go forward with solutions. We can encourage people to respect law enforcement so they don't provoke the police more. We can also have body cams on the police. We can get rid of the unions that protect the police. I'm against pretty much all unions. I think they're not necessary now, but although they were at one time. And so I don't think that this police bias is a serious a front burner problem given the numbers. And then in terms of the economic disparities, I do think that that's a fact. There's no doubt that the net worth of Blacks, the income of Blacks, is much lower. And I'll be sending you a link or later we can post it under the video, or maybe I'll put it up on my blog. But they track household income by ethnic group, the census does. And what they find is that Blacks do trail white Americans. White Americans generate about $68,000 in $68,000 in income, and Blacks generate about $41,000 on average. But the thing is that there are non-white ethnicities that do even better than whites in America, according to the U.S. Census. So there's 15 ethnicities that do better than whites. Indian Americans, I told you that whites get about 68,000 net household income. Well, Indian Americans generate about 120,000, 119,858. Wow. Pakistani Americans generate 77,000, and there are two African groups from Ghana and Nigeria who generate 69,000 and 68,000 respectively. And I'll be sending you the full list, 15 non-white ethnicities. So I don't think that this is due to systemic racism, or these other groups would be getting dinged as well. But I do have an idea of what the problem might be. And I think there are two problems. The first being fatherlessness, and the second one being education. So in terms of fatherlessness, according to the U.S. Census, the poverty rate for single parents is 36.5%. This is in 2008 numbers. Okay. And then the poverty rate for married couples with children is 6.4%. So are Blacks more prone to being children being are they more likely to have single parent households, or are they more likely to have married households? Well, if you go to the Stanford University Center for Education Policy, 65% of Black students are being raised by single parents, whereas 15% of Asian students, and I think they include Indians and things like that in that, they're raised by single parents. So 65 to 15, it's a huge difference. And I think if we're looking for causes of economic disparities, we should be looking at something like fatherlessness, and maybe have policies that encourage every race to marry before they have children. In terms of education, I found this article that quotes Thomas Sowell, the famous Black economist. If your listeners and watchers and readers haven't heard of Thomas Sowell, I think this is probably next to the Bible, next to apologetics, the most important author you should be familiar with, and particularly he's a hero to Black conservatives like me. Wow. So he's got a new book out called Charter Schools and Their Enemies, and he compares the performance of poor Black and Hispanic students in charter schools in Harlem and other low-income minority communities in New York City, such that the public schools and the charter schools are apparently sharing the same buildings, and they have to pass the same tests. And he says that charter school students pass the mathematics test and do well at a rate of 6 times the rate of public school students. And so the suggestion there is that we need to encourage alternatives to public schools if those public schools don't perform well for minority students. But the funny thing is that the article in Real Clear Markets that I'm citing says that the Black Lives Matter movement doesn't support the expansion of charter schools. And in addition to that, the Black Lives Matters website says they don't support the nuclear family. Their quote is, I think your last guest, Monique, talked about this. The quote is, "We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure." Well, if fatherlessness is a factor in poverty, I don't think that that's the right move. And I don't think that opposing school choice in charter schools is the right move either.
Yeah, and it drives me crazy when they say it's the Western described. Is that their quote? The Western described nuclear family?
Western prescribed nuclear family.
Yeah, prescribed. Well, it wasn't from the West; it was from Jesus, and the Old Testament as well. So we could even bring it back further. But definitely Jesus would prescribe, say this is how it ought to be, and affirm the nuclear family. So, yeah, so interesting points. Is there anything else you'd like to add regarding those points?
No, I think that those are their problems, and I'm trying to explain why I think nope. I don't think those problems that you're saying, police brutality and systemic racism, are the problems. I think the problems are fatherlessness and really bad schools.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I think you said earlier that police brutality was not a front burner problem, but would you
Yeah.
say it's a back burner problem? Maybe it's not. Do you think it's even on the stove? But if it is a problem, I mean, well, is there evidence of police brutality towards Black people?
Yeah, so when you look at those numbers, let's say between 5 and 30 unarmed shootings of blacks per year, I think, speaking for myself, I love to drive fast. I should not be saying this, but
Well,
some people.
you've got the Wintery Knight mobile, and I've heard that
Yes.
thing is fast. So
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So if you ever meet me at conferences, I attend SES conferences. I try to go to SES, Southern Evangelical Seminary, plug for Frank Turek and his cross-examine ministry.
Yeah.
And I love to go to the Christian Apologetics. I'm forgetting their name now. You know, the not the theological group, but the Evangelical. Yeah, the EPS, the Evangelical Philosophical
Yeah.
Society. So I
Mhm.
go to those conferences all the time. People recognize me, they come up to me, and some people see my car in the parking lot. So it's a black Roadster, triple black, everything. And I've had it for a long time, and it's got the apologetics verse on it. So if you find that car, if you find a car with 1 Peter 3:15, you found me.
Oh man, you're making it easy for people to find you out.
I'm actually okay with it now, but because the main thing is that I just don't want the bad guys to like show up at my employer or my house.
Yeah.
But I love to meet people at those conferences. So I speed a lot, and I do it less now than before. And so I've dealt with the police. And what you need to do is you just need to put that top down and put your hands on the steering wheel so they can see it. And you get let off, or they give you the ticket, and it's fine. I once had a conversation with a white police officer for an hour, and he didn't give me a ticket because we were enjoying the conversation so much.
Really?
So, yeah, so I think police officers they can get frustrated. They're not perfect. They do make mistakes. It's a tough job. And I don't think you should expect perfection from them. So what I would recommend to the non-whites, if they're concerned about this, is just try your best to not have run-ins with them. I think in the case of George Floyd, I think Candace Owens was saying he had something like 9 prior convictions. So I mean, don't make your lifestyle a lifestyle where you're likely to run into people with guns. Who are under enormous stress and who do a very difficult job. And I have friends who don't like the police, libertarians, and they're not always perfect. And my libertarian friend said to me, "You should mention on the show." My friend Wes, he said, "You should mention on the show that everyone needs to try to not antagonize the police because that often causes them to become more violent than they need to be." And I said, "I'll mention it." So I guess that's my experience dealing with the police. Is like, yeah, they give me tickets because I deserve them, and I just can't help myself. It's the car's fault. By the way, she's named after she's named Copenhagen after the Duke of Wellington's horse at the Battle of Waterloo. All my cars are named after war horses.
That's awesome. Well, you bring up an interesting point. I know you jokingly said it was the car's fault, but you're actually taking responsibility.
Yes.
For pushing down on that accelerator more than you have to, and you're saying to comply, be polite, comply, and obviously, if you can't tell, I'm white, but I told my son, he's actually he has a Native American card. He and his mom do. He looks white, so you can't tell. So, but for him, I mean, before he turned 16, I told him, look, if you get pulled over, this is what I used to be a criminal justice major. And when I was majoring in that thinking I was going to go into police work. I learned, hey, what do you do when you get pulled over? You keep your hands on the steering wheel. You turn the dome light on so they can see you. You're very polite. You're very nice. You move slowly. And I'm a white guy who has that in mind. And I'm telling my son, who is white, telling him to be careful. And when he was first pulled over, he was freaking out, right? Because of all the warnings I gave him. But if he would have been mouthing off to the officer, things might have been different. But yeah, bottom line, comply.
Yep.
And be nice and be polite. And I don't think there's going to be any problem. Now, maybe back in the day, back in the 60s or some things were different. But I think those issues have largely been dealt with. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's as big of a problem now as it used to be. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say to people who are encountering this, except try to avoid dealing with this and take Tim's advice. Just comply.
Yeah. So do you think there is evidence of police brutality against blacks more than other races, or is police brutality a problem in general, or specifically towards a specific race, or what do you think?
Honestly, I may surprise some people by just saying I don't think, in my experience and according to the statistics, I do not think the police are specifically biased against blacks in terms of using extreme violence or targeting them. It certainly isn't my experience. Yeah, that may surprise some people, but I really think that we're looking in the wrong place. I guess what I would say is it may be somewhere on the scale of problems facing blacks in America, but it's going to be really far down compared to the other things that I've raised. I mean, blacks have a 73% out of wedlock birth rate right now, and there just don't seem to be very many voices in the black community or in the black churches that are saying, hey, did you know what the Bible says about this? Maybe we can talk about that a bit later, is like, what does Christian theology and the Bible have to say about about some of these problems, like fatherlessness and education and money.
Mm-hmm.
How should we think about money, like that? And that would probably be a good topic.
Yeah. I mean, I have talked with some of my other black friends who've they've got anecdotal evidence or support, stories that they've experienced personally, where it wasn't maybe police brutality, but they felt like they were being pulled over, that it wasn't justified. They were being pulled over, and maybe the officer was extra rude. And I've got to say, I've experienced an officer like that in my past as well. But my friend, he said, well, man, everybody in my family can tell you a story like that. And I don't know if everybody in my family can do that or not. I haven't asked them. But I mean, have you ever, can you relate to that at all? Or
No,
you can't even
no. I think my dad was driving one time, and a police officer was like waiting for people to make a right turn, where there was a no right turn sign, and the guy put on his sirens and pulled my dad over. My dad was upset when he came home, and he didn't get a ticket. He just warned him not to do that, and that's the only thing that I can think of in terms of my family having run-ins with the law. So honestly, we aren't arrested. Like I said, West Indians, I don't know. Maybe it's just a community thing, or maybe I'm just like it's my family. But at least in the case of my family, and my extended family, we just don't have run-ins with the law. I mean, it's not that difficult, at least for us, to not get into trouble with the police. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like I said, I get caught speeding, once every 3 or 4 years, and that's just going to happen. But imagine really breaking the law. It's just such a unthinkable thing to me that it just wouldn't happen. And I want to talk about this. I want to talk about my experience taking Christianity seriously in terms of personal morality, education, and career, and just maybe set a different standard for Black Americans, where they say, like, what am I supposed to be doing? Because I don't take any advice from the culture in terms of TV, music, movies. I'm very, very like strong-willed in terms of basically saying, what does the Bible say? And then let's go out and read books that explain how the Bible arrived at that conclusion with statistics and evidence. That's how I spend a lot of my time. And so for somebody to come along and say, hey, we're going to go to a strip club, or hey, we're going to go to a bar, hey, we're going to, I have like a beer a year. Like if a friend of mine comes over.
You're such a sinner.
What's that?
A beer a year sinner.
Yes. So my first beer, like I had my first beer when I went to work after college, and we all went to a restaurant, and I said, I don't drink. And they said, oh, come on, you have to have a drink with us. Well, the atheists in the company, they said, we'll let you talk about Jesus if you let us give you a beer to drink. I said, well, okay. So I took the beer and I poured it straight down the center of the glass, and my project manager grabbed it from my hand. She goes, that's not how you pour a beer. So yeah, like I just want to, I hope we have time to talk about this. Like, there's this idea of being authentically Black in America, and that's just closed off to me. I'm authentically Christian, and I have advisors who rein me in when I do stuff that I'm not supposed to do. I have some of them help me prepare by giving me material evidence for some of the points I was going to make, like Carla, Laura, and Dina. They basically know what I'm doing, and they tell me you can't do that. All the time. So I just I feel like I need to talk about this and just say, where did everybody get the idea that these behaviors were okay, that might expose you to the police, to your point? Mm-hmm. How is that even possible? That you thought that doing this or that might get you in trouble was all right for you to do?
Well, you might avoid some of these problems just because you've been infected with whiteness. That's what the critical race theory or the critical race theorist would probably say, that now you need to divest yourself from your whiteness. Wintery Knight.
Yeah, but you see, that's why I was giving you those statistics about those non-white immigrants. I'm telling you.
Well, they've been infected too. They've been infected by whiteness too.
Well, then that's what C.S. Lewis calls good infection.
Yeah, one thing I've really been pushing is this isn't about whiteness. It's about the teachings of Jesus. It's about the gospel, the Great Commission. I've got an article coming out next week. I'll tell you the title. It's currently titled, the working title right now is "The Gospel is Racist," or no, "The Great Commission is Racist," I think is what I'm going to say. So I'm going to be unpacking that. But yeah, it doesn't seem like when you start talking to Black Lives Matter folks or critical race theorists, and they're saying that the problem is whiteness, and you start getting them to explain what they mean by that. And then I said, well, it doesn't seem like the problem is my whiteness. You've got a problem with Jesus.
Yeah.
And his teachings.
I agree.
So,
I don't know. Your guest last week, Monique, she said she actually used the M word. She said, oh, this is about Marxism. This is about equalizing outcomes regardless of personal responsibility. And I mean, can I talk a bit about that? Because I'm going to contrast. I want to contrast Marxism, which is the preferred BLM remedy for some of the problems they're seeing, the economic, the wealth problem. And then I want to contrast that with how Christians, like how the Bible views money, and how the Bible views, how the Bible would respond to disparities in income, because it's two different answers. So, okay. So the BLM co-founder, Patrisse Cullors, I don't know how to pronounce her name, in an interview, I'll send you the link, in the New York Post, she's cited as saying, she and her BLM co-founder, so two BLM co-founders, they are trained Marxists.
Right.
So I'm thinking that that's their approach to these economic problems. Marxism is often, Yeah.
Yeah. If you're a trained Marxist, that seems to logically follow. That's at least the inference to the best explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to contrast the alternative to Marxism, which is free market capitalism, with Marxism. And the resource I have for this is maybe I'll define them first. So in free market capitalism, all that means, and there's beautiful books by Jay Richards, Money, Greed, and God, about this, or Wayne Grudem has a book out there called The Poverty of Nations. These are, I mean, Christians, you need to learn economics. I'm telling you, next to apologetics, economics is number 2 in what I would recommend to Christians.
Really?
Yes, yeah. So free market capitalism is basically...
Wait. Why? Why is economics so important? Why is it right next to apologetics?
It's because we need to be concerned about the type of government that we live in. Try being a Christian in North Korea right now.
Got it.
Try being a Christian in Venezuela or Cuba when you can barely find food to eat. You will find it very difficult. And I want to get to this because money is the fuel that I use to invest in other Christians. And it is the fuel that I use to achieve Christian goals in this society. Yeah. So money is very important to me, not that not that it is the acquisition of it, but it is, like I said, the fuel that you use to speak to the lives of others to achieve Christian goals. So let me just define the free market capitalism. This is where buyers and sellers decide the prices of goods and services by trading. There's no central government that controls the means of production, and there's no central government setting prices. Whereas in Marxism, the central government owns the means of production, and they actually set the prices. So a Marxist policy would be something like minimum wage or rent control, where the government steps in and says, hey, we're going to cap how much rent you can charge, or we're going to cap how little you can pay someone to do a job. Whereas a free market capitalist policy is like, let the buyer and seller agree to what is it trade, and let them both make the trade if they feel that they both benefit. Yeah. So what works? So I have a resource that I love to go to with my coworkers called the Index of Economic Freedom, that's put out by the Heritage Foundation, which is a big Washington think tank. And they rank all the countries based on who has the freest economy. And I'll give you a link to this. But at the top are countries like Singapore, Hong Kong, and Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, and maybe further down, United States, and maybe in the top 10. And then at the very bottom of Index of Economic Freedom, you're going to find countries like Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea. These are the countries where the government owns the means of production and sets the prices. What you can do is you can take that ranking, and then you can take a ranking of per capita GDP, which is the amount of wealth produced by the average citizen in those countries. What you find is the countries that are at the very top of the Index of Economic Freedom have the highest per capita GDP. So those people who are working in those countries, they produce a lot, they make a lot of money. And it may be that their net income might be lower because of higher taxes, maybe not in Hong Kong, but maybe in a country like Norway does pretty well. They're up there. Ireland is up there, but they may have high taxes, but the amount produced by the people who live there is very high, because they can get jobs, they get good educations, they produce a lot, and it causes them to be paid a lot, and that means that their standard of living is high. So let me give you another couple of interesting examples. Everybody probably has heard about Venezuela. Venezuela is pretty near where my parents are from. And I follow people from my parents' country, and they're complaining about the refugees from Venezuela that they're getting. And Venezuela used to actually be a very wealthy country before they elected Hugo Chavez, and they went communist. Now they're very poor. So they were doing well in the Index of Economic Freedoms. Now they're very low, and they're also very poor. But Chile, which is another country in South America, they used to be very poor in like the 1960s. They redid their entire economy to go full-blown free market capitalism, and now they're ranked number, I think, 15 on the Index of Economic Freedom, and their per capita GDP is like $25,000 per person, which American dollars. So this is like a bunch of people who used to, struggle to feed themselves. Now they're like buying televisions and owning multiple cars, and it's because they freed up their economy. So, I guess my last point about communism is you should look up a book called The Black Book of Communism, published by Harvard University Press. It talks about countries that have implemented communism, and they've racked up 100 million dead people. And there's a reason for that. It's because when the government takes over the means of production, it causes a lot of shortages in terms of food. And typically they get the military involved to control the people. And they have concentration camps, death camps. You can find that today in North Korea.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is the answer, is the point I'm trying to say.
That what particularly is the answer?
Marxism is not the answer to how we're going to make Black people more wealthy. I want Black people to be more wealthy. I like the fact that non-whites in America, like Indians and Nigerians, are doing, West Indians are doing really well. Okay, so skin color isn't the problem. And Marxism is definitely not the solution to the wealth disparities.
Marxism seems to be a problem historically and even today in the world, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So let me ask a question based on that. Why do you think it is that Marxism and Christianity don't get along?
Yeah. So I think that is a great question. So in Christianity, in Marxism, the biggest problem is, his theory is that more automation is going to cause the workers to have less and less money and make the people at the top be much, much richer. So he basically is concerned with wealth inequality, and he's prescribing solutions to solve the problem of wealth. And he thinks of religion as a distraction. It's the opiate of the people.
Mm-hmm.
But really, he's a materialist. He believes in Darwinism. He doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in souls. And he thinks that the biggest problem that humans are facing he believes he has to redo the economy in order to share the wealth more equally. Yeah. So in Christianity, this is not the biggest problem. And I've been watching some lectures from Vadi Bakum, and I follow Samuel Say on Twitter. I think that's his name. He writes a blog called Slow to Write, and these guys are black theologians, and what they're saying is the biggest problem in Christianity is separation from God. You're separated from God because of your sin. You're in rebellion against God. You're not seeking after God, and it's not a problem that can be solved by shuffling wealth around. Okay. In Christianity, race doesn't make a difference. What makes the difference is Jesus died for your sins, and your access to that salvation is a free gift from God to you. Now, I know you and I are both middle knowledge, free thinkers. So we agree that humans have a responsibility, humans have a choice, but we also agree that God does all the lifting. So all the work of saving you is done by Jesus on the cross.
Right.
Yeah. So we just have to accept it, and it's a completely different set of problems. And I think in terms of how do we live as Christians, we follow Jesus, and what I see Jesus doing in the New Testament is a lot of self-denial, a lot of patient enduring of suffering, including insults and being beaten. He doesn't seem to think that his lack of wealth is the biggest problem and that government needs to be the solution to that problem. I think Christians typically are expected to be patient in their suffering, and that their focus, if you look at how Jesus responds to the question, what is the greatest commandment? The focus is on loving God and then loving your neighbor.
Right.
And there's nothing in there about having as much stuff as your neighbor and ignoring God. So I think that that's the difference. So I had a quote here from C.S. Lewis, regarding that loving your neighbor and loving God. I think that money is an issue, okay? And the lack of money is an issue. What C.S. Lewis says is this. He says this in Mere Christianity. He's got a chapter in there called The Three Parts of Morality, and he says this. He's comparing humans to a fleet of ships sailing in formation. So each human being is a ship, and they're all sailing towards a destination. So what makes a good ship is you need to know where you are going as a ship. You need to not collide with other ships, and you need to be seaworthy and have your engines in good order. And I think that the Bible does have some recommendations about how to be seaworthy and have your ship in good order. So what I think the Bible says about money is that it doesn't praise spending money in order to communicate status to other people, and it doesn't praise coveting money. There's actually a commandment against coveting, which is looking at your neighbor's wealth and saying, wow, I really need to have what they have in order to be happy, and this is a priority. It's not only is this not a priority, Christians, this is actually sin. You need to not be looking at your neighbor's stuff and saying, I need that. You need to not be stealing from your neighbor, and you need to not be defrauding your neighbor in order to make money. So Christians need to focus, I think, on their education, and they need to focus on working. 2 Thessalonians 3:10 says that people who don't work, neither should they eat. And I think in general, we should seek to look at material possessions in light of eternity, and not make these things the priority. And I'm saying this as someone who has a good education, a good career, and has saved a lot of money. This money is just fuel for the gospel. It is not meant to make you fulfilled in any way. So I would recommend people really check out the book of Philippians, which is my favorite book, where Paul talks about partnering with other Christians in the gospel and the receiving of gifts in order to put the gospel forward. In Philippians 4, he talks about how people have sent him gifts. But his delight is to have fellowship with Christians and to partner with them to achieve goals. And in my case, for me, applying Christianity to my life, my goals are typically mentoring other people, and that can involve sending them books, just listening to them, and also giving to charity. And I want to talk more about that later, because I think that's a very, very important thing. So basically my motivation for getting this education, working this job, things that are hard for me, and saving money rather than spending it like a consumerist or a thrill-seeking hedonist, but just instead saving the money, investing and saving, is so that I can speak to other Christians in love with charity and mentoring. But I think just basically that's my motivation for doing this. It's not about greed, it's not about envy, it's not about comparing myself to other people. It's about, I need to be in ship shape, like C.S. Lewis says. I need to be seaworthy and have my engines in good order, so that I can then turn to other people and say, what do you need, and what are you doing for the gospel? I want to come alongside you and help you.
Well said. And FreeThinking Ministries would not exist if it wasn't for a few men who have that same attitude. I'm all about capitalism, because capitalism, when Christians make money, they fuel the church and they fuel other ministries. And I'm a direct result from that. So I encourage Christians to make as much money as they can and then give as much of it away as they can. And a lot of, the stereotype out there is that people don't do that. Well, I think Christians do, really. I mean, people who take the Bible seriously, who are also making a lot of money, support so many other ministries and churches, and it's the fuel that keeps us going. So I'm very thankful for people with a heart and attitude like you have. So you mentioned why Karl Marx in particular doesn't jive with Christianity, why he himself wouldn't. Is it possible to take his economic ideas and apply them to a nation and still, while still letting Christianity flourish? And even if it's possible, why, if you don't think even if you would say it's possible, but you don't think it probably would, why would you say it probably wouldn't? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I really recommend everybody to answer that question. Check out Jay Richards. Jay Richards is the one who got me interested in economics. Okay.
Really?
I emailed him once and I said, hey, I saw your lecture on Stand to Reason, Jay. That was amazing. What are you talking about? About economics at the end. And he said, oh, economics is great. You need to read Thomas Sowell and F.A. Hayek. And I said, really? Well, all right. And so, yeah, he's the one who got me started in this. And from Thomas Sowell, I branched into, Walter Williams and different people, like that. Free market economics is just fantastic. And so to give you the answer, like, say you were living in a country that had like single payer healthcare. Okay. So like a country like Canada, for example, they have single payer healthcare there, and they have abortions as part of their healthcare. So every pro-life Christian in Canada who pays taxes is paying into a system where abortion is subsidized. So that's what happens when you let the government take over things, is that it's a secular government in Marxism. It's not a bunch of Christians in Marxism going, hey, let's allocate taxpayer money to William Lane Craig debates. This is not what they're doing. Okay. They're not giving money to FreeThinking Ministries, which which sounds like a wonderful idea. But so when you're a Christian taxpayer in a Marxist country, what you're doing, let's say you enact this, what you're doing is you're asking for more and more of your money, because Marxist countries typically have massive taxation. If you look at the European countries, like say countries that are further to the left than us, like say Sweden, although people will correct me, those countries have come back from the Marxism that they had embraced because it didn't work. So some of them are
that easy to come back from Marxism.
No, but they're doing it. Some of those countries are now coming back, from that. So for countries that have embraced Marxism, the individual tax rates are something like, maybe 40 to 60%. So if you're living in like, France or Germany, I think has a bit lower taxes. But that would terrify an American. And the reason why is because as a Christian, you need the freedom to earn this is such a good question, and things are occurring to me as I'm answering it. So I fear working in a system where the government is so large that they are regulating my industry. So for example, suppose I was a Christian doctor, and the only place I could work as a Christian doctor in a country like Canada was in the single payer healthcare system. And they said, you will do sex changes, you will perform abortions, you will approve of this transgender child's transition. Where am I going to go to work now, Tim? The government runs healthcare. And this is the problem. A man with a conscience, a woman with a conscience, cannot work in a system where a secular government has that much power. What you want to do is you want to work in a free market where if your employer says, hey, I don't like what you believe about abortion, I don't like what you believe about same-sex marriage, you say, okay, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go next door to another person who provides these services, and I'm going to work for them. And that's what happens in a free market. You can always find somewhere else to work. You keep more of your own money. You can always find somewhere else to work. You don't have to toe the government line in order to make a living and eat and lead a family. And when you want to put your kids in school, you have options. You don't report your kids to the government schools where they're going to be indoctrinated in, Soviet or Nazi propaganda. You can homeschool, you can private school, you can parochial school. You have options in a free society. And more important, you have the money to make the decision about where your kids are going to go. So I'm just trying to give you the basic answer. It's never worked out well for Christians to allow a secular government to take over healthcare, education, and many things like that. We need freedom and we need money to chart our own course. Mm-hmm. We've got to be able to make our own decisions if we're expecting to lead our families to achieve the results that we want to achieve. No secular government is going to spend our money on what we want. No secular government is going to agree to Christian goals. This is just not possible.
So do you think that's why it's common for many Marxist or communist countries that they actually, the nation or the government persecutes the church and persecutes Christians? Is that the reason why you think? Because
Yes.
they're conscious and will speak against what they're doing, or
Precisely.
Okay.
If I'm trying to run a Christian life plan in North Korea, it's a death penalty for owning a Bible. Okay. So if I want to come and teach my children the Bible, or I want to have Bible study in my house, you're dead if they catch you. So they don't like that there's an alternative worldview with an alternative hierarchy of values that competes with Marx's materialism. They want your allegiance to be to the state, and to believe that the people who are the elites who are making decisions in government know better than you how to spend your money, how to raise your family.
Mm.
And there are actually cases like this. There was a case in Canada where school teachers will try to transition a child against the wishes of the parents. And if the public school is government funded, the hospital is government funded, the courts are taxpayer funded, the judges are taxpayer funded, where are you going to go to fight this?
I see. That makes sense. So, one more spin-off question to that. If this nation falls, I mean, I believe we're seeing the beginnings of what I'd call an attempted Marxist revolution. I pray that it's not successful. But let's just suppose we fall. What's the next best place on the planet to go? Where would you go if you could leave?
Yeah, that's a great question, and people ask me this a lot. Because again, I did this, right? I woke up in one country, I was born in one country, and I looked around and I said, I cannot run a Christian life on this. I can't live with these. I can't make a difference with these laws, with these tax rates, with these rules, with the people in power being this much against me. I got to get out. So I got out. And if things keep going the way things are going here, where do we go? And the answer to that is, I've got an answer. So I've heard Ben Shapiro ask this question. He on his show. I love Ben Shapiro. I love Andrew Klavan. Listen to those guys every day. And they said, where would you live, given that Los Angeles is so bad where he lives? And he says, well, I'm an Orthodox Jew. I've got to live near synagogue because I got to walk to synagogue. I can't drive. He said, if I didn't have that, I would go to somewhere like South Dakota where there's fewer people. So that got me thinking. And I would say that if I see this coming down the pipe, where like Argentina, or I think Argentina nationalized their retirement plans. They just said, oh my goodness, you can't have a personal retirement account. We need to nationalize that and put everybody on Social Security. So if I see stuff like this happening, and I know my assets are going to be seized by the government in order to pay down debt, buy votes, whatever they're going to do, my goal will be to move to the most civilized country I can find that's small. And so I'm looking at places like Panama or Chile, and things like that. Countries that have a decent enough infrastructure. Panama infrastructure is completely U.S. built because of the Panama Canal is of strategic importance to us. But this is not something that I've looked in very closely. But go small is my advice. Find a country with good infrastructure, because just like Ben Shapiro says, the woke people tend to congregate in big cities, and they tend to do better when there's more people. And so this is probably what I would do, because I'm telling you right now, I love America, but America is not the people. It's not the genes. It's not the land. America is the Constitution.
Yeah, it's an idea.
Right. It's the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And if we find ourselves in a situation where we have elected elites who do not respect those things, guys like me who came here to be part of the American enterprise, the American dream, and we learn to be American, we will be forced with very difficult choices. I think that's what I would say.
Well said. Well, I'm glad I live in a flyover state. I live in Nebraska. South Dakota, you said Ben Shapiro referenced South Dakota. There are neighbors to the north. I love the fact that people look at Nebraska as a flyover state. I say, hey, keep thinking about us that way. Keep flying over us, because there's something special about the middle of the country. We're right. I say we're the bullseye of the nation, and we're right in the middle. And I think Shapiro's right. This is something special about this place and this part of the country. But Anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about systemic racism a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. Let's get back on the whole racism path here. So I think a case can be made that systemic racism used to exist, definitely. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm also quite open. I don't reject the idea that there's no systemic racism today. I've often referred to it as echoes of systemic racism. I'm really open to that still existing today. These echoes. So I haven't ruled out systemic racism existing today, but I definitely haven't ruled it in either. So I guess I'm still kind of in my fact-finding stage of the game. I've seen evidence for it. I've also seen defeaters to those arguments and counter arguments, and then other defeaters, and I'm just kind of going back and forth. I'm still engaged in the process of rationality, as I've referred to it in my academic work. So with all that said, do you think there's evidence of systemic racism today? And if so, what is it?
I don't think there is. Again, the go-to people on this are Black economists Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams. You will never learn anything on TV or in music or in the culture that is accurate about these issues. It's very hard. You need to hit the books. So here's a quotation from Walter Williams, and he says, this is from an article entitled "How to Not Be Poor in America." No one can blame a person if he starts out in life poor, because how one starts out is not his fault. If he stays poor, he is to blame because it is his fault. Avoiding long-term poverty is not rocket science. First, graduate from high school. Second, get married before you have children and stay married. Third, work at any kind of job, even one that starts out paying the minimum wage. And finally, avoid engaging in criminal behavior. It turns out that a married couple, each earning the minimum wage, would earn an annual combined income of $30,000. The Census Bureau poverty line for a family of two is $15,500. For a family of four, $23,000. By the way, no adult who starts out earning the minimum wage does so for very long. No, it's always the gateway to bigger and better jobs when you show you can report on time. So that's Black economist Walter Williams. I think he was at one time, may still be, the chair of the Department of Economics at George Mason University, which is a great university for economics.
Yeah.
So I don't see it, and maybe I can talk a little bit about my choices. What I did to rise out of poverty. I mentioned some of that.
Yeah, let's hold off on that for a second. I do want to get to your choices here.
Mm-hmm.
Just earlier today, so we've got the FreeThinking Ministries Facebook page, and then we've got the FreeThinking podcast group. And so anybody can get on the FreeThinking Ministries Facebook page. But then we've got, you can apply to be a part of the FreeThinking podcast Facebook group. And so we have good conversations there. I don't know if you're a part of that, but you need to be a part of that because actually you came up today.
Okay.
Yeah, and a young man, a person of color, he got on there and we started debating about this. He said to deny systemic racism is racist itself. And so I brought up, I'm like, you're going to call Wintery Knight a racist? What would your response be to somebody say, hey, if you deny systemic racist, then you're a racist?
Yeah, my response is simple. We're never. I am a West Indian Black. My advice is going to be what works because I have pursued a life plan that has allowed me to not only succeed in terms of finances, but also in terms of immigration. So the typical American-born Black started out way ahead of me. Not only was I born in poverty, but I was born in poverty in a not a first world country. Okay, so this is very difficult for me, I guess my advice for him is there isn't going to be any way out of poverty that doesn't involve good choices. That's why I read the Walter Williams quote, to try to say to him, listen, you're not living in North Korea, you're living in America. If you make these decisions, you won't be poor. And to ignore the evidence that I gave before about non-whites succeeding fabulously, and how success is rooted in a strong performance in education and a strong married family unit is just ignoring the evidence.
Yeah.
That's what makes Indians so different. It is because they have Indian Americans, East Indians, not me, East Indian Americans at the top. What do we know about them? Just an abysmally low divorce rate, not abysmally low, but a very low divorce rate, massive focus on education and performance in schools. These are choices you make. So I just don't see it. And I would just give myself as an example. You've got to. I recommend to people that you change your mind about what the Black culture or the culture as a whole tells you need to do about wealth disparities. Just forget everything they're saying in the music, in the movies, in the television, in the streaming. Just read the Bible. Begin by reading the Bible. And then read, I like Evangelical Apologetics, because it's hard to do the right thing if you don't think that these things are true. And then I recommended free market economics, and I also like military history, and maybe I'll explain why. But take the Bible seriously on things like premarital sex outside of marriage, and drunkenness. Take the Bible seriously about things like gambling and signaling wealth with material possessions. Just take the Bible seriously when it says, if you don't work, neither shall you eat, and the person who refuses to provide for his family has denied the faith. Believe it, okay? And live like it. Don't look for excuses from it. Don't run from it. Just accept what the Bible says and remake your life according to those principles. I'm speaking as someone who has experience in this. Choose your friends and your role models so that you do not let non-Christians influence you. I am surrounded with people I mentor who are people who grew up in Christian homes, who are telling me, oh, I don't know how I ended up in cohabitating with this atheist. And their Facebook pages are filled with non-Christians. And I'm told constantly, I can't post that. I can't post that. Cut them off. And make sure that you can be you, say what you want to say, and make decisions, and don't worry about who's going to get offended. Cut those people off if you can't handle them. If you can't fight them, cut them off. So I think that we just have to be more serious about putting the Bible into practice. And I'm a work in progress. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I feel like the world is just so different from what the Bible teaches that we really have to be aggressive. And speaking to your friend about the systemic racism, so as I said before, I showed that different non-white races are able to perform well. Well, in my case, I have the immigration success story, and I still have echoes of that. I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night with my heart racing, for fear of, if you lose your job when you're on a work permit, you're gone, you're deported. So I had to live with that for a long period of time before I was made into a permanent resident, it's just hard. So I'm saying this as something that I achieved by not waiting for people to fix my wealth problems, by redistributing wealth with Marxism, and by defunding the police. Don't wait for defunding the police, and don't wait for Marxism. You just read your Bible and you put it into practice. So every year I max out my Roth and 401k. I put the extra into a taxable investment account. I'm saying this to your friend, like, is he doing this? Because this is what he needs to do. That lady, Nicole Hannah-Jones, she said, no amount of saving is going to lift you out of poverty. This is just not the case in my experience. I maxed out my Roth and 401k from the time I started working. I bought my first home for cash. It was a new construction home with a warranty, because I have no skills. I have literally no skills for fixing anything. I never had a TV for 15 years. I just bought one recently because I sometimes like to stream StarCraft 2 games, which is beside the point. But I love watching professionals play video games at times when I'm working out. So the charitable giving, if you focus on being a Christian, you have an obligation to look out for your neighbor. That's what I was explaining in that C.S. Lewis quote. You gotta be in ship shape, and you have to mind the other ships, that they don't run into you. Okay? So I know people who are doing campus apologetics with Ratio Christi and other groups, who organize lectures, debates, apologetics conferences. Two of my college buddies went on to form apologetics organizations where they organize apologetics conferences, and I fund them. I fund Ratio Christi events constantly. I work with a guy called Eric Chabot at Ohio State University. Yeah, and he has the best guests. Him and I are in lockstep on what matters. We love evidential apologetics, and he's amazing.
Well, hey, guess what? I was just his guest the other day. So.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would just urge young Christians, come on over and learn about Tim Stratton and Eric Chabot. These are the guys who are putting it on the line for Christianity in effective ways. You've got to listen to them talk and get some ideas about what you need to be doing. And I think you guys are so broad. If Eric can talk politics, Eric can talk economics. You're branching out into other things. We are practical people. We are not here to just sing hymns. Okay, we're trying to run a Christian life, and we're trying to move the ball forward and put some points on the board. We're not doing this to feel good, and we're not indifferent to the way that the country is going. So I apologize for offending anyone with this, but at this time in my life, my net worth is now 1.25 million. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying to your buddy, America makes wealth. And you need to be very thankful to be here and participate in it rather than seeking to tear it down. And I have to say, there have been times where I have failed miserably in finances. I paid rent for 18 years before I could buy a house because I didn't have permanent residency and I was worried about getting deported. That's just wasted money. This year I bought stocks. I made 20% and I sold. My friend Eric in Indiana made 60% because he didn't sell. So I'm just screwing up all the time, and I'm still wealthy. When I joined one company, they gave me 1,000 options with a strike price of $12, and we got acquired 9 months later before the options were vested. They're not vested. You have them, but you can't sell them. Okay, so they weren't vested. We got acquired. The stock shot up to $90. I could have had $90,000 or something like that. And if you put that away, it would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars this time. And I missed it by 3 months. I'm telling you, America is the wealth maker. The free market system can make people like me who make mistakes rich. And you've got to love your country, and you got to understand what your country's doing for you. And in order to participate in that, I think you have to take those steps about education, career, and investing, and charity. Because when you're obsessed with charity and you're looking to your Christian neighbors to participate in what they're doing for the gospel, you don't spend money. You're like, what am I going to do? Am I going to go on vacation, or am I going to have an apologetics conference put on? There's no decision to be made there. If you take the Bible seriously about stewardship of your money, you're not spending money. I said I bought a new house. I have no furniture in my house. Like my friends come over and they're like, where do we sit? And I'm like, yeah, I haven't gotten around to that quite yet. This is what I'm saying. Stop spending money on comforts and fun and thrills and travel. Save it and put it into the gospel. Put it into the gospel.
Wow. That's good stuff. We got a question here in the comments. What do you mean by systemic racism? I think I would just say, even if nobody has racist feelings towards anybody else, what they mean by that is that the people in our past that did have racist feelings and thoughts, they set up the system, and so today we feel those echoes, if you will, or hear those echoes of racism, and it still would keep some people down. Am I explaining that well?
Yeah, here's what I would say.
But you are an example that that's not true. Because you said you were born into poverty in another country, and you came here and you worked really hard, and now you're a millionaire.
Right. Well, a lot of Americans get that first million. It's a lot of Americans. No, but I mean,
long way to go.
Yeah. There's actually a wonderful book called the Millionaire Next Door, and everybody go out and get that book and read that book. It'll tell you everything that I've just been telling you. Drive a secondhand car. I have trouble with that one, but don't show your wealth. Don't buy an expensive house. Don't live in an expensive neighborhood. Marry never divorce, save your money. All these things are so simple. And when you say millionaire, we actually have a large percentage of American, single digits, but fairly large, who are millionaires, but they don't do it how people think. It's not because they're athletes and singers. They do it my way, which is never spend money. Never spend your money on trying to communicate status, on trying to have a good time. America is the wealth maker. If you get a job here, you keep working for 30 years, and you invest a third of what you earn, you'll be a millionaire by age 50. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. It's guaranteed. So to answer his question about the systemic racism, so I think what they would say about that is there was recently a tweet about an African-American museum that had listed out a whole bunch of characteristics about what they counted as white culture.
Right.
And the stuff that they counted as white culture was not white culture. It was Asian culture. We own it. Okay, I'm joking. But, it's Indian culture, it's Pakistani culture, it's West Indian culture, it's Nigerian culture, it is a Ghanaian culture. It is marry, stay married, get A's in school, get the first job you can get, put the money aside, keep moving up. Never spend your money on fun and thrills. Don't listen to the culture. Don't drink. Don't chase women, and these kinds of things. So systemic racism, what they mean by that is they mean, well, what if we don't do all of that? How is it that we're poor? And that's the problem. Is they're saying, well, look, blacks clearly have less net income than whites, right? And the problem is that if you define white culture as what is really Asian culture of hard work and focus on education and careful with your money and so on, then of course there's systemic racism, because it looks like blacks are being penalized in terms of wealth for just not acting white. So that's what they mean. If you identify that culture with whiteness, then you think it's racist that you're not succeeding. But if you say, well, I'm just going to do these things and I don't care what color the people are who are doing this, well, really, if you imitate East Indians, you're not being white, but you're going to be rich. And so there's really, it comes down to your individual decision making, if that makes sense. So that's what I would say to that.
Are you talking about free will and responsibility?
I absolutely am. I believe in that. Across the board, I believe in it.
Well, that's one reason why I take this topic seriously, is because as a philosophically inclined theologian, I spend a lot of time discussing the fact that humans have libertarian free will, that God's created us. It doesn't make sense in this otherwise deterministic world or universe that we live in that we would have free will, but we do, and I've given arguments for that. But with that freedom comes responsibility. We are responsible for the choices that we make, no matter how hard these choices might be in the environments that we find ourselves. So, amen to that. I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yep. So I just wanted to take a moment to say, about the focus on other Christians. I think people think, well, he's probably trying to become wealthy, which is why he's making these decisions. I don't believe it. I'm saying to you, as a Christian, you have to be concerned with your neighbor Christian. If you read Philippians, he talks about partnering with other people for the gospel and giving and receiving of gifts. That's what I'm saying to you is your motivation for school and work. I'm not telling you that there's some of this in the East Indian culture where they're trying to one-up each other in terms of school, and even in the Asian culture they're trying to one-up each other and show off. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you meet Christians, you will find I've through my blog, I met a woman who was Nigerian who attempted suicide. She now has a BS and an MS, and she's working in IT. I met a girl through my blog who had an abortion. She was working for Edward Jones and she quit that. I shouldn't name names of companies, but now she's married and she had a child after her abortion, and her husband is a stud. He's a total apologetics conservative. Nice. I partner with pro-life groups and apologetics groups on campus. I have a friend, my friend Carla. She does Ratio Christi campus ministry. I just ask her, what's broken in your house? And she goes, oh, my coffee maker's broken. I say, hey, I'm going to order you a new coffee maker. And she can have people over to her house to drink coffee and have apologetics discussions. Right. My best friend, my best senior spiritual advisor and advisor is a girl named Dina. She's a senior manager, very high up in her company, very difficult, demanding job. She does countercultural, anti-feminist evangelism at work. She's always getting into fights with people, trying to counter the culture and anti-feminism. She's given lectures on natural marriage and defense of it. I sent her a pack of apologetics books, and one day she called me from her house when she was having a conversation with her atheist older brother, and younger brother, and she put the phone in her pocket, and I was listening to her go through the Stephen C. Meyer arguments, origin of life, Cambrian explosion, and the biggest thing is she's young Earth, and she doesn't care. She's just going to use the arguments that beat her brother up. So I'm saying, all around you, Christians who are listening to the show, all around you, there are Christians who are involved in good things, campus ministry, apologetics conversations, pro-life groups, conferences, inviting people into their homes. You need to make a ton of money. You need to work hard in school, and you need to work hard at work. You need to take responsibility and never blame anyone else, so that you can have the money to speak to these people. What I was going to say about Dina is she once hurt her hand at work, and she has a cat. This is really stupid, and I swear it's almost over. But she has a cat she loves. The cat's name is Toby, and she cleans up the fur of the cat, and she only had this heavy vacuum. So I sent her a portable vacuum that she could clean the stairs with. So you have to listen to your Christian friends who are doing work for the kingdom, and you have to speak to them in ways that help them. That's why you need to get a good education and work hard at work and save your money. It's not greed. You just need to know how to rescue your friends and invest in what they're doing. Partner with them for the gospel. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I have a couple questions here. I think we've kind of already touched on these, so we can kind of make these quick. But I guess I want to ask, are the solutions proposed by Black Lives Matter likely to work? I think you've already answered that.
Yeah.
If you could touch on that again really quickly. But then compare and contrast the solutions that Black Lives Matter is offering with what the Bible says, and what does the Bible have to say about the problems raised by Black Lives Matter?
Right. So their solutions, again, are things like defund the police and Marxism. And like I tried to show, the defund the police, this is just not the biggest problem facing blacks. And the Marxism, I tried to show, look, we've already tried this in a million different countries, and all we get is 100 million dead and a bunch of poverty and starvation. You can see it happening today in Venezuela. Go and follow the news. Go on my blog, winteryknight.com. Look for Venezuela. You'll find a million stories, because I'm following them closely. Because it's communism in real time, and you can read what happens when they do that. So I don't think these solutions are going to work. And I think the Bible solutions is stop worrying about making your life better here and now with money. Stop worrying. Stop thinking that you're going to buy happiness with money and show off to other people. Honestly, read the New Testament and watch carefully what it says. I think there it's just not considered a good thing to be greedy, to defraud people, to look for your comfort and your salvation and your wealth. And what I do see is the giving to charity that I talked about, and that doesn't mean like it just means go and talk to your neighbor, find out what they're doing for the gospel, come alongside them, invest in what they're doing, let them invest in you. So I think that it's just two different approaches to what's important. So
yeah. All right. Well, today. The topic the title of today's broadcast is Chasing the American Dream. And that was actually your idea for the title. So here's a question. How does a person of any skin tone chase the American dream? If you're white or black or anything else, how does a person chase that American dream? And, I guess that's to say, what choices are associated with success in America? You've already touched on this, but expand on that a little more.
Yeah, so if you're born here, you're already on third base, and I think it makes a lot of sense to if you're born into a single parent home, you've got to find a system of values and a source of value that is going to help you. So God is your Father in heaven, and I think reading the Bible is going to give you a lot of the parenting that you need. And even it may not give you the experience of having a father, but I think it's definitely going to give you moral rules and spiritual truths that will help you to prioritize what you need to do, look at other people as more important than yourself, give you that humility and gratitude, and self-control that's just going to help you to be able to be successful. Not that I'm preaching prosperity gospel here. Like I said, the reason we're doing this is to help other people, to love other people. So I think my advice is try to turn to the Bible first and foremost. If you're stuck in a bad situation, if you're not white, if you don't have a good family situation, turn to the Bible first. I'm saying this from experience. This will never leave you. When God saves you and you change priorities, you will be, when you succeed, you will never turn your back on what God did for you. Your relationship with God will always be number one, and you will always be investing in it. This is the jewel of your life. So I would say that's my advice. Read the Bible. Always read the Bible first, and look to it and look to it practically. Now, I recommend apologetics, economics, and military history because I feel like they put practicality onto what the Bible teaches. So if the Bible says to you, if you don't supply for your family, you've denied the faith. That really isn't telling you how to do that. But free market economics will tell you how to be prosperous. If you don't love your country, reading military history will fill you with gratitude and humility for the people who have laid down their lives to give you these freedoms. You might want to start with the Korean War, where American soldiers laid down their lives to protect South Koreans from North Korean communism. Just think about what it's like to live in North Korea today, what it's like to live in South Korea today. You buy Samsung monitors, you buy Hyundai cars from these people. We are trading with them as equals. They have liberty, and the reason they have liberty is because American soldiers went in there and fought communists, and then we left.
Wow.
Just left our all we asked for is place to bury our dead. So I recommend economics and military history and apologetics as a way to sort of make Christianity practical for yourself. Then
Make Christianity practical again.
Yeah, and I think when you go to school and you're a Christian and you're seeking to defend Christianity according to 1 Peter 3:15, you will find that you're very interested in physics. You're very interested in biology.
Right.
If you watch a debate and you see that what's being debated is origin of life, Cambrian explosion, Big Bang cosmology, and cosmic fine-tuning, you care about what your science teachers are telling you in those classrooms. I have had so many people who did mediocre in their schools who then came out and read William Lane Craig and Stephen Meyer and said, if I had known that this is what they were teaching me about, I would have paid more attention.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you now, pay attention in class because you're going to need what they're teaching you in order to fight for the truths of the Christian worldview. And then naturally, like I said, working for money is the fuel that you use to invest in other people, in mentoring relationships and in charity relationships where you fund lectures, fund ministries, and fund conferences.
All right. Well, let's start to wrap it up. I've got 3 more questions I'd like to ask you, but I also want to get done in the next 20 minutes. So let's see what
You're good.
So first, how did the Christian worldview affect your decisions? You're talking about, hey, it's all about free will and responsibility and taking responsibility for your choices. But what did that Christian world? You say, hey, you got to start with the Bible. This impacted your worldview, the way you see everything. How did that impact your choices?
Yeah, so I sort of explained a little bit about that previously, but I think in terms of personal morality, in terms of education, in terms of career, and in terms of finances, those are some definite ways that did it. So, like I said, read Romans 12:1 and 2. It says you need to
Yep.
renew your mind. That's where the reading comes in. That is non-negotiable. I don't care about your smartphone. I don't care about your television. I don't care about your movies. You really need to read the Bible and the apologetics and the economics and the military history, in my view. So if you are in a classroom and the atheist, and this is high school for me and the university, we had two atheists, Patrick and Dan, and I was always second best to them. I'm willing to admit it, and so I felt like Christianity was getting slighted, by the fact that everybody knew Patrick was an atheist, everybody knew Dan was an atheist in college, and so you try harder because you need to learn enough so that you are able to discuss these kinds of things with them, and show Christianity isn't dumb. You've got to live out Christianity in a way that the people around you say, "What have you got that I haven't got?" You've got to make them curious about religious things by being excellent in your education and career. That's my friend Wes. He's going to be so happy that I said that. He is excellent in his career, and he's my career mentor. So I would say again, for me, the Bible has taught me to be careful about choosing friends and role models, and be careful about letting the world influence me. Those are just things I recommend to everybody. Comparing me to you, and I'm saying you to your listener, it's very unlikely that you and I are in the same place with respect to friends, role models, books, TV, music, and movies. Like I'm probably like a monk compared to most of the people listening and watching this podcast. And I'm saying to you, be weird. Be weird.
Yeah, I like that. My wife will tell you that I'm extremely weird. So I'm good in your book then.
Good. Yeah.
So I was going to ask you how these choices worked out for you, but I think you've already answered that.
Yeah, I've covered that.
Yep, you've done quite well. So I guess finally, what sort of laws and policies should white Christians support in order to help Black people?
Yes, I get asked that a lot by my white friends. And I think the issues are like what we were talking about. We need better schools. We need to promote the family. I think we need to promote the family. We definitely need to help Blacks with schools, and we definitely need to just help communicate in terms of policies that if you take responsibility for your financial decisions, America will make you rich. So I have some ideas about that. Policy is what I read. I read healthcare policy and education policy. This is like my special areas of interest in economics. So I don't know, just books like Who Killed Healthcare by Regina Hertzlinger. She's like a Harvard business prof. And I don't know why I like this, but this is what I care about. So in terms of public schools, I think if we give the money to the parents and let them choose, and that's going to help, because parents care about whether their children learn or not. Public school teachers don't really get paid more based on whether the children learn or not. So if we give it to the parents choose, they're going to choose what's best for their kids. There's something called right to work, where people can work without having to join a union. I think teacher unions tend to be kind of bad for bad teachers can survive easily because unions kind of protect them, and they also prevent good teachers from being paid more. So I think some kind of federal right to work law or restricting or abolishing teacher unions would be really helpful, because then teachers would be under pressure to perform, and they wouldn't be protected if they really were not good at their jobs. I think getting more people who are in the private sector who can do who are doing jobs that are helpful to young people, like shop and computer science and biology. I think allowing them to go into the school without having to get an education college degree or a certification would be great, because they have experience knowing, like, I used to do this. I used to teach kids math and science and logic, and I was a TA, and so I worked early, and I just taught from the perspective of somebody who was like, you will be doing this a month from now. You will be doing this for money. You will pay attention in my class. You will do well on my tests. So I think private sector workers are great for the schools because they're like, I'm going to tell you what you need to know to make money and support a family and get on with your life, move out, and stuff like that. So increase emphasis on vocational training. College isn't for everybody. I would actually eliminate all college funding, and in place of that, maybe make earning income from age 16 to 25 or something tax-free, just to communicate to people, hey, you should be focused on getting a job. This college is for getting a job. Vocational trade school training is for getting a job. And I don't like that plumbers and electricians have to pay for people to go get degrees where it's like in grievance studies, like women's studies, Marxist studies, black studies. Yeah, I'm politically incorrect. I don't see why my plumber should have to pay for that. So I think just cut it all out and instead say to them, hey, your scholarship is you get tax-free income, maybe till you're 25 or 30 or something. And Obama did something when he came in. He made the student loan decisions government decisions instead of bank decisions. And I think when banks are making the decisions, they say to you, hey, you need to study computer science so we get our money back. And I think that's excellent advice for young people is to just focus on STEM degrees or trade school so that they're...
What about theology and apologetics?
Yeah. So I love reading theologians and philosophers. I guess what I would say is this might be a situation, and obviously I'm not trying to pick a fight here. What I'm trying to say is if you're coming from my position, it helps to do this. Now, my kids, I had a plan to get married and have 4 kids, and I wanted like Stephen Meyer, William Lane Craig. There's a lady who works for the Discovery Institute named Ann Gager. She's fantastic. And maybe, I don't know, Marsha Blackburn or Michelle Bachmann, some senator. They don't have degrees in computer science. Okay. Maybe, Stephen Meyer is a philosopher. William Lane Craig's a philosopher. Thomas Sowell's an economist. I don't know what the politicians have, probably law degrees. So I guess what I'm saying is if you're poor, let your children study those things. You will not influence anybody with a degree in computer science, but your children will influence many with degrees in philosophy, theology, law, and things like that. So I would say if you're set up and you're going to have kids, encourage them. But if you're poor and you need to not be poor, the first order of business, I think, is to make sure that you can get stable. I apologize if that's.
I was just joking around because obviously you've demonstrated that you can major in something else and also be a great philosopher, theologian, and an apologist.
Yeah, these things are non-negotiable. Every Christian needs to read philosophy and philosophy of religion. It's just the language of truth, the language of debate.
Amen to that. That might be a good spot to wrap it up. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Any last words you'd like to say on this show?
So I just want to again acknowledge Carla, Dina, and Laura for helping me with the research and prep for the podcast. They're reach out to other Christians. You never know who you're going to find who can help you, and there's value in many different places that you just have to look and you'll find it. And then I guess the only other thing I wanted to say was. Check out my blog at winteryknight.com. And I don't know if you're looking for the references for the citations in the stuff I presented, I'm going to send Tim a list and hopefully he can print that out somewhere.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description. You send everything to me and I'll put it in the description.
That's perfect. And maybe just the last thing is I want to say these authors' names. So with respect to the topic, it would be great if people can try to find books by Thomas Sowell, Walter Williams, Heather MacDonald, Shelby Steele, and Larry Elder. And I'm just starting to get interested in Ben Carson, the former presidential candidate who is a Johns Hopkins surgeon. I think we need to have heroes about us. It's not just the facts, but we need to have heroes speaking into our lives, where instead of listening to, fussing about, say, George Floyd, we fuss about Ben Carson and try to think, how can I be like Ben Carson?
Yeah.
So I guess read, look at those authors and read them.
And you mentioned Vodi Bakum earlier. You like him too, right?
Yeah, I actually have grown in liking him. I just discovered him again about a month ago. Previously, I sort of thought, I don't know, he doesn't sound like he's really grounded in apologetics, and he may not be as against Marxism as I am. And oh my goodness, was I ever wrong? Definitely check out his sermons on YouTube. He is great.
Yeah, as a non-Calvinist.
Yeah.
I knew that he was a Calvinist, so I didn't really follow him too closely. But man, I've been listening to him speak politically and against critical theory and critical race theory lately. And I'm like, oh man, I don't care if you're a Calvinist. I'm all on board on what you're talking about here, man. I'll back you 100%.
Yeah.
So the things we're facing today in culture are important enough that we can drop our intramural theological debates for a while and team up. I think it's vital for the Christian church to team up and to rise up against this real threat that's at our doorstep right now.
Yeah.
Well, man, Wintery Knight, thank you so much for coming on to our show today. I hope you come back. Can we do this again in the future?
Absolutely.
Great. This is your first live stream. Was it a good experience?
It was fantastic. I give it a 10 out of 10. I'll hear later from people how badly I screwed up. But I have a lot of advisors, like older advisors, married advisors, and they rule me with an iron fist. So they will tell me later what I was not supposed to say and what I'm supposed to say. But I would love to do it again.
These advisors and having that kind of accountability, that's so important. So that's good that you got yourself surrounded with a good team.
Yep.
I like to meet those guys sometimes, those men and women. But
they're mostly ladies.
Are they? Well, that's awesome. I want to meet them sometime. Yeah. So maybe we'll have them on the show. Maybe they'll show their faces. You can't show yours, but you got to get you a superhero mask. I mean, cover your whole face. Come on, man. You need to invest it. Talk to your advisors about getting a mask and actually a whole superhero costume with your little Knight logo. That's what you got to do. And then you can go speak at apologetics conferences wearing your costume.
Yeah, my dream.
Yeah. Suit up. Well, like I said, last week we had a hero, Monique Duson. Next week, we're going to have a young man who I'm looking at as a hero these days. His name is Adam Madavi. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. We've recently been talking a lot on social media and now over text messages and emails. And here's a young man, a college student. He's from Iranian descent, married to an African-American woman. And he's a college student now. And he says he is persecuted and called racist and everything else because he's not liberal, or he opposes the Black Lives Matter organization, and he stands up for Christianity on the college campus. So he's making some waves right now on this college campus, and I want to just give him a platform so that more people can hear what he's doing. So make sure you're back next week to hear from that hero of mine. But again, Wintery Knight, thank you for being our guest today. You are I do consider you to be a hero, and I have for a long time. So please keep fighting that good fight. And
I got you.
All right, brother.
We need you.
Well, thanks again. God bless. And to everybody out there, stay reasonable. Read your Bible and get a good biblical worldview. It'll make sense of everything else once you do that. So until next week, see you later.